there were times when you just hit the wall. I call it flat forehead syndrome because you just sit there and you pound your head on the same wall going, I need a job that looks like the last one. And it's like, but what if you don't? What if there's something else?
What if the best chapter of your life hasn't even begun yet? What lies within you is the power to live brighter, bolder, and truer than ever before. So welcome to Vivitude, where caregiving, connections, and career come into balance, and where your vitality, vision, and voice shines through. Because the revolution isn't out there, it's already within you. Welcome to Vivitude.
Welcome to Vivitude. This is Kate Phillips, and I am your purpose and prosperity host here on Vivitude, where we talk about financial and occupational wellness. And I'm super excited for today's guest, my friend Sheyenne Kreamer, because she is going to address the concerns that people have around their future work. If you are looking at maybe you're unemployed, maybe you've got challenges around because you're helping out with kids or with elderly parents and you can't work full time, or maybe you are just caught up in the uncertainty of this job market, concerns about AI. Sheyenne has got some real value to share around solutions and how to shorten your unemployment or make that leap to something that is more meaningful for you. Welcome, Sheyenne.
Thank you, Kate. It is absolutely a joy and an honor to be here.
Well, I am glad to have you. Please share a little bit about your story that led you to this work. And you know what? Before we do that, I looked up a couple of statistics. So we know that job losses are on the rise in the US, I mentioned AI. And globally, I was blown away by this statistic. Goldman Sachs says that artificial intelligence by 2030 could replace the equivalent of 300 million full-time jobs. That is mind-blowing, seems impossible because the whole population of the US is just a little over 300, and this is speaking globally. So we are looking at huge disruptions in the job market. And researchers from University of Pennsylvania and OpenAI, they are saying that white collar workers earning up to $80,000 a year are most likely to be affected by workforce automation. I know your story doesn't have anything to do with AI disruption, but you do have a story about your career disruption and some of the things that you learned from that.
Absolutely. And, my story actually goes all the way back to high school. Sometimes it blows my mind to think about I was already in this space way back then. How in the world did I get there? And, for me, it was heavily at that time about watching a lot of my friends graduating high school who were going off to study things that well-meaning parents wanted them to study. And I didn't. I was a rebel. I was valedictorian in my high school class, and I refused to go to college right away. I'm like, I don't know what I want to do. I want to get out here and get some experience first, and then figure it out from there. And that's exactly what I did. And I think part of what has really propelled me, along with the layoff experiences that I went through, is the fact that I have lost friends who have taken their lives because they had something here that they didn't feel they had permission to do with their lives. And that's just heart-wrenching for me. Some of the close friends that I've lost. But I did end
So
up in
sorry.
a Fortune 500 company right out of high school. Went through an apprenticeship program. They paid my way through college. So I thought I was going to have it all right there.
Yeah,
No
you were
problem,
set.
right? ready to get the watch at retirement and all that good stuff. That's what
Hmm.
I was sold. And ended up that I worked for this company for 11 years, got laid off, ended up being transferred by them 800 miles from where I originally grew up. And less than a year later, I got laid off again. So that was kind of like, okay, I've had enough of this. What am I going to do? What in the world? And luckily, the second one was actually a plant closing. So they gave us severance pay. They gave us time to stay on payroll and do a lot of job searching. For me, it ended up being more about soul searching than just job searching, because I did
Mm.
end up with some job offers, but when I thought about taking them, I felt this sickness in the pit of my stomach. And I was just like, that's not where I need to be anymore.
Oh my gosh. Well, at the end of this interview, I know we're going to share a really valuable resource, a free training that you have available. And I was just going through it before this interview, and what really struck me, and it's so in alignment with what I teach about the new retirement paradigm, which is like we've got this model of living life that is just handed to us, and I think we need to question it now. One of the reasons why we're friends, I'm sure. But this aha that you shared was so profound and simple that normally we seek a career path and then we try to fit our life around it. And what we should be doing is seeking a life path. And then when we find our life path, then we find a career or work or a business that fits our life path. I love that.
Mhm.
So tell me how that worked out in your life when you realized the career path you were on wasn't the one you wanted to be on.
Well, and I will tell you, it has been an unfolding and an evolving thing for probably close to 30 years now.
Hmm.
In fact, from that second layoff situation, I was cooking dinner one night, and it was like 2 weeks before they were going to close the doors on us, and I'm still going, okay, I let go of that job, I let go of that job, they didn't feel right, now what? And I'm cooking, I'm peeling potatoes, and all of a sudden it hit me in the head, and it was like, be a consultant. And I'm like, what? That made no sense to me because I didn't even know how to spell entrepreneur at the time. But I knew that there was one thing that I love to do more than anything else, and I now do it in a very different way. I loved leading and facilitating problem solving teams. That was something I was trained in corporate America. And so I'm sitting there thinking, okay, well, if I was going to try to be a consultant, I better figure out something I really love to do. So I focused on that because I knew I could get excited about it. And I just started calling people that I had been working with. We all got laid off at the same time, and saying, who should I talk to about this? And it didn't take hardly any time at all that one of the people I had been working closely with said, "Oh my God, our HR manager needs you like yesterday." And she said, "Let
Hmm.
me see if he'll talk to you." And, from the day that I got this crazy idea that hit my brain to be a consultant, it was only about 3 weeks and I had a 6-month consulting contract. So,
Wow. If that isn't a sign that you're on the right track, I don't know what is.
exactly. So, and doing something I love to do. They did not have that knowledge base in house on how to go about, facilitating problem solving teams on a manufacturing shop floor, but that was my expertise. And so, I had more fun doing that than anything I had done, and I was able to ask for quite a bit more money than I was making as an employee, because I was a consultant, I was, independent, I was a contractor, and yeah, they had no problem with what I asked for.
And you've done many things in addition to consulting over the years. Do you want to give us give us an idea of some of the things that you have done that are aligned with your path, but in addition to consulting?
Well, the thing is, and I just said this to somebody the other day, I said, given what I've created over the last 25 or 30 years, I said, it's a good thing that I couldn't see all that back then because I'd still be hiding in a cave today. Because there's so much and there's so many things I've been involved with. So, my husband and I, we work together now, and we have done things like young entrepreneur programs. We've taught in homeless shelters and prisons, and we've well, the Find Your Song class that I've created. I actually walked into a community college here in North Carolina with that class and said, I think I could help your continuing education program with this class. Kind of looked through it and went, wow, we don't have anything like this. Yeah, come on in. So, I ended up with this college just paying me to go to nonprofits and all over the place and teach this material. So, yeah,
Fantastic.
done a lot.
And I know you've done coaching with prospective entrepreneurs. You've helped people make some of those shifts and changes in their occupation, and I know you have many passions around health, around community, physical health, mental health, all of that. And we may get into that a little more later, but tell me more about how helping people find their song. And by the way, the course, the program that Cheyenne is talking about is called Find Your Song and Sing It, Finding or Creating Work You Love, which is actually a lot so similar to what I talk about with the new retirement paradigm, that I say I'm creating a life and work that I don't want to retire from, because I think we've got kind of a waste of human capital when everyone is quitting work cold turkey at 65 and sitting around a pool with a margarita. We might get into that later too, but let's go back to that question around helping people. How does this shorten somebody's time, either with making a career transition or shorten time in unemployment, to understand what their song is?
Absolutely. And, I used to have people say, I don't have to come to your class and sing, do I? I'm like, no, no, we're talking about your heart song. That's what it's really
To
all about.
know.
And it's about helping people to start to connect their head and their hearts. We all get caught up in our heads and we forget to check in here. And what I ended up finding through a lot of my unemployed situations was that there were times when you just hit the wall. I call it flat forehead syndrome because you just sit there and you pound your head on the same wall, going, "I need a job that looks like the last one," and it's like, but what if you don't? What if there's something else? And for some people, that may sound like something more spiritually based, like, okay, so I have some God given purpose that I'm supposed to do, and I don't know what it is. Or for some people, I can talk to all sides. It's things that get caught in the subconscious. Because if you've had an experience earlier in life where there was something that usually it's related to something that you've made it through. You hit the wall, you had some
Yes.
kind of a major challenge, and you made it through, and you now have wisdom you need to be sharing with other people. That gets recorded in your subconscious mind. And if at some point in time your subconscious wants that to come out, and you're ignoring it or trying to bury it or stuff it in a closet, then that's when the brick wall happens. And
Mm.
so it is so much about getting the head and the heart connected, about listening to what's here, about taking a look at your past to see, do I have any of those life challenges that I've come through that maybe now I could help other people go through it? I know that's a lot of your story, so I know that's what you understand. But it also could be Another big piece is there's so many people out here who get really angry or really sad about things they're seeing that are going on in the world. And they make the mistake of thinking they can't do anything about it.
Mm,
Because if you're getting really angry or really sad about something you're seeing out here, that means you've got some passion linked to that. And there may
yes.
be a shift in a career path that you need to make that starts to honor that passion. If you don't,
Yes.
then you stay unemployed for a very long time. Quick story, because this is the guy who actually inspired me to create this class. This gentleman I knew was referred to me at church, and he'd been unemployed for 18 months. And
Mm,
brilliant guy, he was a software quality engineer sitting in the middle of a tech hub out here. It made no sense that he had been unemployed for 18 months. And I sat down, I looked at his resume, I talked to him, and I said, you know, you've got an excellent resume, a pleasing personality. And I said, there's no logical reason in my mind you should still be unemployed. And he said, well, yeah, I know. I was hoping you had an idea that I don't have. I said, well, let's get illogical. So, what's hiding in your closet that you have great passion around and you have stuffed it away and you're not paying attention to it? And he got all
mm.
embarrassed looking and he's like, oh, how do you know what's in my closet? I said, I don't. I'm asking. And he immediately started blubbering about his guitar. And I
About
said,
what?
oh, really? You're a guitarist? And he's like, yeah. And I said, so when's the last time you touched that guitar? And he looks down at his feet and he goes, might be 10 years. And I said, really? And he said, yeah. And I really love to play. I love to write my own music. I'm like, okay, that's your assignment. Go home, take that guitar out, see what you're inspired to do with it, and see what happens. And so he did. And he was inspired to call his church to see if he could get on the schedule to play for the congregation because he knew that would force him to practice. And
Mhm.
within 3 days of him doing that, he gets a call out of the blue from a company he never heard of saying, oh my God, we love your resume. Can you come in and interview today? And it was a startup. That's why he hadn't heard of it. They didn't even know how they got his resume. They made him a job offer on the spot. He,
Wow,
he,
wow.
he
I
dissolved
love
the
that
brick
story.
wall.
I thought you were going to tell me he'd become a professional musician, but no, it was just a
No.
matter of him paying attention to his own desires. And when we're blocking ourselves, blocking our own creativity, I can see how that would be an issue. And Cheyenne mentioned my situation. Probably some of the listeners haven't heard it, but one of the reasons I created the new retirement paradigm and helping people really find some creative alternatives to the way we typically do both life and finances comes from my own experience of during the quote unquote Great Recession. I call it the not so great recession now because it really wasn't so great for me because I lost my entire net worth with which at that time I'd built up a net worth of multiple six figures. And in my 40s and my late 40s, I was both, I was moving out of being a realtor, but I was a real estate investor, and I became my father's caregiver and went through other life challenges, health challenges, family emergencies, and then of course we had, the economy crashed, and I went through not one, but two simultaneous foreclosures, both my own
Wow.
home and one of the rental homes, lost everything in a matter of about 18 months. All of my assets became liabilities. And at that time, I felt very much like I am off my path. Like this is bad and wrong, and I am off my path. But, life has a way of going full circle where eventually I realized, oh no, that exactly was my path. And even though at the time I was a financial coach and I abandoned financial coaching for a while because I was, too ashamed. I'm like, nobody really wants to coach with somebody who's just gone through foreclosure. But I realized that was my path. And going through the loss and the foreclosure and the stress, it made me much more compassionate. It also made me much more creative because, when you're facing a challenge, sometimes you've got to, like when life is comfortable, you don't necessarily have to challenge yourself very hard, but when you don't know where you're going to live and you've got, 30 days or however many days I had to find a new home, you've got to figure it out. You've got to pull every strength out of the magic hat and make it work. And I did. And it ended up really shifting, when I reclaimed. First, I became a financial writer and helped other financial professionals for a number of years with their businesses. And then when I was ready to do financial coaching again, it had changed. And it just like you got the sign from above of become a consultant, there was one night that it was almost like this audible, like you're going to talk to people about retirement. And even though I, did help people with like investing and maybe what we would call financial literacy or financial education, retirement wasn't my thing. I think because I felt like, oh, I lost everything and I'm way behind the eight ball in my own retirement, looking at the numbers. And then I realized, oh, and that forced me to reinvent my life, to get creative, to adopt a whole new philosophy where it's not about becoming a millionaire by 50 and not, like having a big pile of money. And I want to talk about the value of work and the way that we think about retirement and life in this world, or in this country especially, but somewhat around the world. We have a linear way of we're taught that we go to school for 20 or so years, give or take. School, school, school. Then the school phase ends, and now we do the work phase. And the next 35, give or take years, you work, work, work. Don't want to work too bad. It's your time to work. School's done, now we work. And then we hit some magic age, 65, maybe 67, 62 for some people. And then we enter into the leisure part of life. Work is done, learning's done. Now we're into the leisure part of life. I think this is ridiculous. I believe we ought to be lifelong learners and lifelong earners as well. I believe that finding something to do with our time that is meaningful, that we're never too old for that. I mean, we look at, oh gosh, I'm trying to think of her name, the woman who did all the work with the gorillas. She
Oh,
passed
Jane Goodall.
recently. Jane Goodall. She was scheduled to speak on the day that she passed. She was
Wow.
she was traveling and speak like she never stopped work. That was her life calling, and she just kept doing it.
Mhm.
And and you shared with me before we got on here an observation that you made in living in a 55 plus community. Please share, Cheyenne.
Oh my goodness. Well, and I've since found out that I have several friends who've observed the same thing. So this is not an isolated situation.
Mhm.
My husband and I are full-time RVers for people who probably don't know me. So this is my home on wheels. And so we typically head for Florida in the winter. And last winter was the first time, I think, that we've actually stayed in a 55 plus community that was for RVers.
Mhm.
And when I think about retirement, I'm kind of in your space, Kate. I'm like, okay, we have people in their later years with so much wisdom that they have learned that other people could benefit from. I believe there's a huge gap that needs to be closed between some of our younger generations and our older generations with, you know, transfer of knowledge and wisdom. And yet, here in
Absolutely.
this park, I was horrified. I got to the point of being depressed. I did not even want to go to the pool because you
Hmm.
go to the pool and I'd sit there and I'd float around listening to all these conversations. And it was either we had people at the pool who were bringing mixers and creating strawberry daiquiris at the pool. And then they're talking about the bar they're going to go to. And then they're talking about going to karaoke and drinking some more. And then, and how many CBD gummies they were going to have. And I'm like, oh my God, these people are simply waiting to die.
Mm. A- and nothing against a good strawberry daiquiri, but when that
No.
becomes your entire life and like it's numbing ourselves out. And it reminds me of a statistic of I'll see if you can guess um, what the most popular pastime or activity is for retirees 70 and over. And it's not drinking. Although maybe it is. Maybe they just didn't claim that on the survey. But what is the most popular pastime for retirees 70 and over? Not
I
sure.
don't know. I've heard
Okay.
I've heard a lot of people go into a lot of restaurants. They get really into learning all
Okay.
the
Well,
restaurants
I
again.
will tell you. And when they added up all the other hobbies and all of the other pastimes, this one thing, people spent more time doing this than all of the other things combined, and it's watching television. I know, I know. It's
I
it's
didn't want to
it's
think that.
it's depressing. So I think, people get all excited about retirement, but it's like, what are we retiring to? And and I think one of the reasons that your work is so valuable is that if we are working a job that makes us miserable or that stresses us out or that doesn't align with our purpose, and we just can't wait to get rid of it. We can't wait to retire from that because we don't like that work. Like the fix is not strawberry margaritas. The fix is actually finding that purpose instead. And I had a huge aha, if I can share, about the value of work. Oh, probably 20 years ago. Uh, doing doing volunteer work, and for 6 weeks my ex and I, we put together children's programs for at-risk youth on Vancouver Island. And not only were we not paid for that, but we had to raise money to go do that. We had to raise money to go work for free for 6 weeks, and it was so rewarding. And then a short time after that, um, I was a realtor, and and people were going. Some people from my office went to help out in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, the huge hurricane that hit
Oh,
New Orleans. And they came back and they said, "We've never worked so hard in our lives. We put on hazmat suits. It was hot. It was humid. We worked from dawn until dark. It was the hardest work we've ever done in our lives. And I can't wait to go back," they said, because
wow.
it was so rewarding, and the camaraderie and the difference that they made and the relationships they built and the gratitude that they experienced from people that they were helping. It's like they found this purpose that, as much as they may have loved, selling homes, which we were both realtors at the time, that this was even more rewarding. And there's fascinating studies showing that when you start paying people to do something that they love, then sometimes it clouds that, like it clouds their motivation. And then it's like, well, I don't want to do that thing I love anymore unless you pay me. So So our relationship with money can also impact this, where we've got to be clear. You mentioned that finding our purpose, but also what are the problems that we are trying to solve? I'll bet you can give me some case studies or examples of people who saw a problem and solved it. And actually, please start with the example. I love the example of your husband and the service job that he created when he saw a really obvious problem that he could solve.
Absolutely. And, that's the thing. Business is really about find a need and fill it, right? And
Yes.
he had been working in the office equipment industry for a long time. He was very good at fixing and selling copying machines and cash registers and printers and faxes and all that kind of stuff. But the one thing he knew was that there was not a company in town that would service anything after 5 o'clock or on a weekend. And
Hmm.
so he kept telling me, he kept saying, I could do so much better than the company I'm working for. And I said, well, then why don't you? And it's funny because so many people think that you've got to have a huge amounts of money in the bank to be able to start something on your own, and it's not necessarily true. I mean, basically, I think we spent all of $10 on some white paper and black ink and just typed up these really simple flyers. This was in like 1992 or something, that just said, copiers after hours, we'll fix it when the other guys won't. And and he happened to take those around and just put them out at it was a small business complex, and he happened to do it during tax season. Guess who
Mm.
was on his doorstep all over the place? It was the accountants. So, so he started to build a clientele. He actually was out repairing a machine on Easter Sunday because
Oh,
the next day was April 15th, and these
oh
people
my
had to
gosh.
have a machine, and they were willing to pay any amount for him to come out. So he built up a customer base that way, and eventually just he said, you know what? I'm making enough now. I'm getting out of where my employer is. I'm doing this myself. And he did for 15 years. And the greatest gift that I received out of that wasn't the money. It was the fact that he had control of his time because he had
Mm.
some techs working for him. And he was
Mm.
able to be our son's basketball coach, their baseball coach. He was there for all their track meets. He was able to be an engaged dad. And that was amazing to me.
Oh, that is a gift. So it sounds like he had a year or two when he didn't have that control. He's out working on Easter Sunday, but then he was able to grow the business, hire some techs, get that leverage, which can
Yeah.
be one of the beautiful benefits of having a well-run business. I love it. Is there another example you'd like to share of someone who has found a problem and fixed it through a new career path?
Yeah. Well, I'll talk about one of the very early people that I worked with. I was running a networking group for businesses at the same time that I was developing this class. And so my networking group, I started talking a lot about, what are you really passionate about? Is it something you can integrate into your current business? And one of the gals, she was in business loans when she came to the group, and she was good at it. She had a brilliant, financial mind, and she could do really great things to help businesses with loans. But the more she listened to me, she started talking very differently. And she's like, you keep making me think about my grandmother. And I said, really? Why your grandmother? And she said, because my grandmother, I believe she grew up in Russia, and she was an herbalist. And she was big on, helping all family members to learn about herbs and healing with herbs and things of that nature. And the more she came to our networking meetings, the more she heard me talk about this. She didn't go through my class officially, but she kind of did. And she ended up coming to the meeting one day and said, I've just become certified as an aromatherapist. I'm giving up
Mm.
my business loan business, and I'm going to build a holistically oriented wellness business. Well, not only did she build a business for herself, but she ended up acquiring a facility where she has a whole group of holistic practitioners working together.
Wow. Oh, that's amazing. That is so. I love that story. What do you think are some of the opportunities these days for someone who is either looking for side income or looking for a new career path? What do you think are some undervalued opportunities? And I know in your workshop you mentioned books. So behind me is a book that I co-authored with Kim Butler about generational wealth. It's called Perpetual Wealth. And we wrote that book, we published that book 4 or 5 years ago, and it is still bringing in royalties. So now I'm working on my next book about the new retirement paradigm. I know you've got at least one book out. Feel free to mention that, but also tell us, what do you think are some other just opportunities for people that want to add some extra income, whether it's a career choice or a side gig?
Mm. Well, there's some very definite things. I for one have not dug into really learning about AI, and I think there's huge opportunities right now for people who want to really dig in and learn about that, because there's a lot of small business owners like myself who really haven't explored how to use it as a tool. I refuse to let it take over my life, but I would love to be able to know more about how to use it as a tool that helps to, streamline things that you're doing. So that is kind of an obvious thing. But when I teach my Find Your Song class, I typically try to go to the three simplest ways that you can get started building some
Mm,
kind of income. And one is exactly like what you just said. It's what is your knowledge base? Should you
yeah.
write a book? Should you create a class? It's so simple. We have so many tools now to be able to put our knowledge out online in some form or another. That's absolutely the simplest way. And then, provide a service. Whatever service you have done for somebody else, you could be doing it for yourself. That's what my husband did. He
Mhm.
just took the knowledge he had, which he originally got in the Marine Corps, electromechanical repair, and went out on his own and did it. So, providing the service, providing some kind of knowledge products, or a book included in that. And then the third simplest is, adopting existing products to be involved with. And that can be anything from being a realtor, adopting other people's houses to sell, to being an insurance agent. But I absolutely am a big fan of the network marketing industry. I think
Mhm.
some of the absolutely most amazing products on the planet can be found in that industry. And the fact that a lot of people misunderstand the industry, I get very sad about. I'm actually in the process of writing a book about it now and putting it in a
Good for you.
paradigm of calling it, that we should be calling it golden rule marketing. Because
Mm,
if you really understand how the platform has been designed and how you should use it, the whole idea is, as you help others to build wealth, you build it too. So
absolutely.
what's not to love about that idea? And so many people go out here and slam it and call it pyramid schemes and all this kind of stuff. And nothing could be further from the truth if you're doing it with
If
heart.
you're doing it right. And I think that is where the resistance comes from. I have known some pushy people that I'm like, you see them and you walk the other way. But I have also, participated more as a customer than as a business builder, but I've participated in network marketing companies. I have discovered products that changed my health and that I got excited about sharing with other people because it had
Mhm.
honestly, genuinely helped me. And, you can also look at it as referral marketing. Nobody thinks it's weird when somebody says, "Oh, you really ought to try that new restaurant. We had a fantastic dinner there the other night." Nobody thinks that's weird. But if you say, I started using this product and this healed or that got better, or I had way more energy, like, oh, I don't know, man. But I agree. And I've known people, yes, they say, oh, but 97% or whatever, 98% of people fail in network marketing. And I'm like, well, were they trying to do business or did they just want to use the product? Because,
Yeah.
I'm a member of Legal Shield. I'm not trying to build
Mhm.
that business, but it's a great model. I've got, I needed access to some law help, legal help, and I know the gal that I signed up under, she thought when she was kind of at retirement age, like, oh, I'll see if I can create a little extra income, and it's like a full-time six-figure income for her now that
Yep.
she's just loving and enjoying. I have another friend who, age 40 was going through a divorce, a business failure. On her 40th birthday, had her electricity, her lights shut off. Happy
Oh,
birthday to her. She was crying in the bathroom with the door locked so the kids wouldn't hear her. And now it's 15, 16 years later, and she has created over $2 million of commissions in a health related uh, company. And so absolutely. And she also there was a coach, a business coach, consultant, very uh, high end guy. I paid thousands of dollars to attend an event that this guy did, and then 6 months later found out that my friend who was in the network marketing company, that her company had hired him and she got to go to trainings for free. So
oh,
there's
wow.
so there's quality business training. There
Oh,
is
yes.
and we know that there's no better personal growth plan on the planet than entrepreneurship. Whether it's service-based business, whether it's an information-based business, whether it's a product-based business, there's no better there's no better personal growth program on the planet than entrepreneurship.
It is totally true. And I'm so glad you made that mention because it's true. We've gotten training, Les Brown and Robert Kiyosaki and all these people that you pay ridiculous amounts to go see, but we got it through our network marketing companies. So it is something that people don't understand the value that's actually there.
Yeah, yeah, there is. And adults, like, we have the ability to say no thank you when we're not interested in something. We
Mhm.
get advertising thrown at us all the time, and we know how to, like, press skip if we just need to not take things so personally. If someone is building a business, we can, even if we say no thank you, we can admire that they are growing themselves and growing a business. We don't have to be haters.
No, not at all. And well, the other piece of that puzzle, though, that I also taught as part of Find Your Song is the value of social entrepreneurship. So,
Oh,
my
yeah.
husband and I actually work with Legal Shield, Longevity, and a few other companies. And our whole reason for doing it is to build income that allows us to do our community based work. So,
Mhm, mhm.
why on earth do not more people see that there can be value instead of grant writing and begging people for dollars? Create something with income and be able to use that income to advance whatever it is that you want to create as a solution. That is the future. because grants are getting locked down. There's so much fraud being exposed out here right now. Grants are
Mm,
getting locked down. So if you want to do something to make an impact in your community, you best be finding a way to generate income that can be channeled into that. So I
love
think
it.
that network marketing is hugely underutilized in that way right now.
I love it. I love the point that that nonprofits that they need to find a way to become to generate some profits and become self-supporting. And a lot of times people love to support those companies, but they've got to offer some kind of a service, some kind of a product. I have a friend, I've interviewed her here on this show, Jan Edwards. She runs a nonprofit called Paving the Way, and her mission in life is to disrupt the cycle of child trafficking. That does not sound like an easy thing to monetize. And it took her years to figure out how to monetize that. But now Jan and her growing staff, they get paid by schools to come in and educate middle schoolers on online safety and how to respond. I mean, the challenges these kids are going through, their parents have no
Mhm.
idea the challenges that they are going through online. And thank goodness, Jan was doing these trainings for free, and she still does, a lot of things for free, but she has built that business up, and there is recognized value in that. I mean, if keeping our
Yeah.
kids safe doesn't have value, I don't know what does. So, Cheyenne, tell us where, and we'll have all these links in the show notes and in the YouTube descriptions, but tell us where people can find you. And I want to remind you that one of these links, and I think it's CheyenneKreamer.com, that you'll find, you can go access this, a webinar that introduces you to find your song and sing it. It's completely free. I absolutely encourage you to go check that out and watch it, especially if you are wanting to create extra income or maybe facing some unemployment and looking to, take a new direction. And tell us what else you're up to and where we can find you, Cheyenne.
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm up to so much. And yes, on CheyenneKreamer.com, you'll find I actually give myself the title of the Healing on Purpose Architect. So that's what I'm all about, is helping to heal body, mind, and spirit so that more people can live in their purpose, because illness is stopping so many people who have big vision and not able to move forward with it. So you'll find that there. The other thing, you mentioned one of my books, and I have created a page where it not only shows the system we've built, it's called the Unity for Wellness and Peace System. And people can find that at unityforwellnessandpeace.com. And that explains the whole system that we have built out, which is really about developing more social entrepreneurs who can get eventually engaged in their communities to be problem solvers in their communities. So that's what that whole system
Love
is
it.
really about. And at the bottom of the page, if you're willing to join our newsletter, then you can download a free digital copy of our book that's called "Skip the Politics and Create Heaven on Earth."
I
Because
love that. I
uh,
love that. You can be of any political persuasion or none at all. I think I've becoming a political atheist, which means I don't believe in either side.
yep,
Uh,
I call myself a purple squirrel. I'm in the
Purple
middle.
squirrel. Yeah, yeah, because I mean, when the government does something good, I will cheer it on, but it's that we don't want to be dependent on the government saving us. We've got to, put in our own creativity and build our own models and work with our neighbors, and we really saw some great things happening during the pandemic where communities would rally together to keep something going. I remember seeing a dairy farm that they had to start pasteurizing their own milk, and they stayed awake for days on end, installed. They were going to go out of business, and then I saw this photograph of this like 5 mile long line of people in the community, that maybe it wasn't 5 miles long, but it was long, and they were going to purchase milk directly from the farmer that had been, they had been transporting their milk to be pasteurized elsewhere and sold off in like cartons to, maybe lunchtime cafeterias, and they needed this whole new plan, and the community just rallied together and supported them, kept them in business, and I'll bet they had the freshest milk on the planet too. As a
They did.
Yeah.
That's
And you
it.
have a fantastic Facebook group as well. I think there'll be a link
Ooh.
to that. And the name of the Facebook group again?
Is Unity for Wellness and Peace. So
Unity
it
for Wellness
really
and Peace.
is. And anybody, and I don't believe I've interviewed you there yet. I would love to do
Yeah,
that,
it's been a
because
while,
that's
but we did.
okay. All right. I have lost track because I know I've done at least 100 interviews in that group now. And, anybody who is, I call them the change makers, because that's really what I'm looking to do in that group is celebrating change makers and encouraging them to, kind of take a look at who's here and who should you be collaborating with. Because that's the ultimate of my message is, there's so many of us that I believe we were all born with a piece of a super puzzle. That if we were actively building our piece of the super puzzle and then going out here and finding people who have the other pieces and integrating them together, we would be living on a planet with health, wealth, and peace for all. And the fact that we're not seeing as much of that as we would like simply means one thing: there's too many people still sitting on their puzzle piece.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's my direction to people is stop sitting on your puzzle piece. And if you start building, don't try to do it alone. Get out of your silo and find the people you should be collaborating with.
I absolutely love that. And that is a perfect note to end on. We started with, how do you make a career transition? And now we're solving all the biggest problems in the world, and our health and wellness and peace. We can't get any better than that. Thank you so much, Cheyenne. This was Sheyenne Kreamer. And please do look at all of the links that we have for you, including a link to her Find Your Song and Sing It, Finding or Creating Work You Love. And if you're new here on Vivitude, please subscribe, hit that little bell. We have all kinds of fascinating conversations, especially for 40 plus women, sandwich generation women who are looking to reinvent themselves and live their best life. Thanks so much for tuning in to Vivitude. I'm Kate Phillips with Total Wealth.
Thanks for listening to Vivitude. 4 hosts, 1 each week. We help you revivitude your next chapter because purpose, passion, and prosperity isn't out there. They're already within you. Brighter, bolder, truer. Vivitude.